Hello, subscribers. Hello, friends. Today we have a very unique edition of our podcast. Not because Bazar Yara went abroad, we're in Canada today, but because we have very knowledgeable guest, distinguished, honorable Professor Walter Block, author of Defending the Undefendable, which was recently translated into Georgian by our friends from Girchi. So let's welcome our guest. This would be a landmark edition of our podcast because of him, I would say. Mr. Block, Professor, welcome to Bazar Yara.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you.
How you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
So you came from the United States of America. I'm from New York. They're from Philly.
Right.
And we found out about you recently. Well, I mean, I didn't know about it. So once we start searching you, and we wound up talking to you, texting to you, and then here we go. We're here, and we would like to talk about your book, definitely, and then what made you do this? We will go there. Basically, your life, probably. What you believed before you started believing these, and how these transitions happened. And then I'm sure that you gotta have some questions too, and then we will answer you too.
Sounds good. I'm delighted to be here with you guys.
Thank you and welcome to our podcast. Say something too.
So, as Ucha mentioned, the book is main reason why we learned about you. We are relatively new, couple of years, maybe more than 5 years, looking at the libertarian world, where you are one of the notable figure, I would say, admired, and basically tell us a little bit chronologically background. Let's go to those years where a young guy, Walter Block, came to a conclusion that there are undefendables. How did you come up to writing this book?
Okay, I'll be happy to share that with you. I'm Jewish. I was born in Brooklyn, and everyone in Brooklyn was a socialist that I knew of. Most Jews are socialists, unfortunately. And I was more interested in girls and sports when I was in high school. And if you asked me what my political views, I would have said socialist. I was on the track team with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, I'm sure you know of, a socialist senator. And he and I ran the same events, half mile, cross country, 2.5 miles. I have to tell you my Bernie Sanders joke. My Bernie Sanders joke is that Bernie doesn't run away from much. He doesn't run away from socialism. And this is before socialism became popular in the US, thanks to him in large part. He doesn't not only run away from ex-convicts voting, but even convicts, people in jail voting. But there's one person from whom he runs away, and that's me. Why? Because he was one of the best milers in the city. I was a mediocre runner, and we'd both start off at the same starting line, and then he would run away from me. So Bernie ran away from me.
Are you still in touch?
Every 5 years, we say hello to each other, and we acknowledge we have different views. And I'm a professor of Loyola University in New Orleans. And I threatened him that if he ever comes to New Orleans and he doesn't let me host him, I will be very upset and angry. And he promised that when his travels come to New Orleans, he will allow me to host him. So I'm looking forward to that.
Are you still trying to convert him, or you gave up?
I try to convert everyone.
Okay.
I never give up on anyone. My wife and daughter are both socialists, and I haven't given up on them. My son, happily, is a free enterpriser, so I don't have to worry about him. I went to high school, and I was a socialist. And then I went to Brooklyn College, and I was still a socialist. And Ayn Rand came to lecture at Brooklyn College. And I wanted to convert her to socialism. I had this thing about converting people to whatever I believe in. And there was this long, long table, and Ayn Rand was sitting at the head of the table, and her chief lieutenants, Alan Greenspan, Leonard Peikoff, several others, Nathaniel Brannan, were all sitting there, and the only empty seat were at the other end of the table. And I turned to my neighbor and I said, this socialism is the way to go, capitalism is evil. And he said, well, I don't really know that much about it, but the people who do are at the other end of the table. So I went there and I stuck my head between Ayn Rand's and Nathaniel Brannan's, and I said, there's a socialist who wants to debate someone on socialism and capitalism. I said, who? I said, me. I was maybe 20 years old. Brandon maybe 35, Rand 50 or so. Brandon was very, very nice. He said, I will come to the other end of the table to talk to you about this. There's no room here. On two conditions. One, you have to keep this discussion going until we settle it. We won't just have one discussion. And two, you have to promise to read two books. One book was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. The other was Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. Well, we had a discussion. I read the two books, and I just couldn't put Atlas Shrugged down. It's 1,200 pages of small type. I read the whole thing in one weekend. I was just amazed. It was brilliant. In my view, the best novel ever written. And I came to Brandon's house and Rand's house in Manhattan, 4 or 5 times, and I was converted. I was now a free enterprise, limited government person. I never really followed all of objectivism, the metaphysics, epistemology, but the economics really got me. And I was sort of a Randian. But there was one thing that bothered me about them, and that is when she gave a lecture, if you asked a nice question, she would give you a nice answer. Like on page 42, you said this, could you elaborate? That's a nice question. But if you said on page 42, you said this, and over here you said that, and there's a contradiction, you know what she would say? She'd get out. I mean, this is appalling. She wouldn't discuss it, although in person with me, when she converted me, she was very nice, and I would ask a question, and she would give an answer. But on the stage, she was very different, and the same with Brandon. So I would leave for 6 months because they were horrible. But they were the only people I knew who were free enterprise, so I'd come back. I was sort of schizophrenic, Mm-hmm. I'd come back, I'd leave, I'd come back. And then I was majoring in philosophy at Brooklyn College, and I had Hospers was one of my teachers, who was the first guy who ran on the Libertarian Party in 1972. And I was free enterprise then, and I was unsure whether the best vehicle to promote free enterprise would be economics or philosophy. So I enrolled in two master's programs, Brooklyn College Philosophy, CCNY, City College of New York, Economics. And I was taking one semester, 2 of this and 3 of that, another 4 of this, 1 of that. And then finally I decided it was economics was a better vehicle to promote libertarianism. And I was at Columbia University, and I was a fellow student of Larry Moss. He was a year behind me, I think. And he said, you have to meet Murray Rothbard. He's an anarchist. I said, I don't want to meet an anarchist. Anarchist is crazy. You need government to... No, I was an Ayn Rand supporter, and she believed in limited government. And I thought that anarchism was crazy. I didn't want to meet Murray Rothbard. But he and his roommate, Jerry Wallows, ganged up on me, and they forced me, not really forced me, and I finally met Murray. And Murray converted me to anarchism in about 10 minutes. What he did very sneakily is he used Hazlitt against me. Now, Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson shows that We don't need government roads. Private roads are better. We don't need a post office for government. Private could do that better. We don't need government restaurants. Horrible thought. Private restaurants are better. And I said, why doesn't this work for armies, courts, and police, which were the only legitimate functions of government that Ayn Rand would acknowledge? And I saw the light. It's like a light bulb lit over my head. And now I was an anarcho-capitalist and a friend of Murray Rothbard's, and he was my mentor. I was never a formal student of his, but I think I'm the only person that ever co-authored anything with Murray. I'm very proud of that. I once substituted for him when he was teaching at Brooklyn Polytech, and he couldn't make the class. He asked me to substitute for him, which was an honor. He and I have a lot in common. We both married we're both Jewish, and we both married Christian girls who were taller than us. We both got our PhD at Columbia. We're both short and fat, and so we have a lot in common. And Murray is my main influence on everything. I don't agree with Murray on everything, but I'm certainly heavily influenced by him. He is my mentor. So that's sort of the story as to how I adopted my present views. Now, I think the next question was, well, how did I get to write Defending the Undefendable? The reason I got to write Defending the Undefendable is I was writing my PhD dissertation on rent control at Columbia. And Gary Becker, a Nobel Prize winner, was my mentor, my thesis advisor. And it was sort of interesting to begin with, but a PhD dissertation takes 2 or 3 years to write. And it was mostly mathematical and statistical. I was bored silly. So I would try to encourage myself to do one more econometric regression, and my reward was that I would take a whole day to do whatever I wanted if I just did this one more thing. So I took a whole day and I wrote about why we should legalize drugs. And then I would get back to the dissertation, and then I wrote about blackmail, why blackmail should be legalized. And then I get back to the dissertation, and then I wrote about taxi cab drivers or child laborers or whatever it was. So by the time I finished my dissertation, I had 35 essays. And those 35 essays are what's in Defending the Undefendable.
The first.
Defending the Undefendable 1. Subsequently, I think that was 76, and then I think in 20 years later, I did Defending 2, and then another 15 years later, Defending 3. I'm now working on Defending 4. There are a lot of people that need defense.
Yeah, okay, that was great. But when you mention, like, in your young age, if you identify yourself as a socialist, like, we are doing this podcast for Georgians, so people from Soviet Union, and what do you mean under this?
Why would you think the socialism was good?
No.
Well, because I was illiterate economically. I didn't understand, and in my culture, everyone was a socialist. We need more government to help the poor. Under capitalism, it would be greedy, and we'd have starvation, and babies would starve, and it was very unsophisticated.
And people saying, look at Soviet Union, how good they live there, or?
Well, that was way more sophisticated than my views in high school. My views was just socialism is good and capitalism is bad. I never thought about the Soviet Union being better than the U.S. because
Because they are socialist.
Well, the Soviet Union was socialist, and
Right.
the U.S. was not really capitalist, but more capitalist. It was
Right.
more of a mixed economy. But now we're getting into relatively sophisticated considerations. When I was in high school, as I say, my main interest was girls and sports. And I just sort of accepted socialism because everyone else did, and I didn't think about it.
So it sounded good.
Yeah.
It sounded good.
Yeah.
Did you?
We'll all share, we'll all be nice, we'll all be part of the community.
Did you know Marx and Engels by then? No.
I knew nothing.
Okay.
I just knew socialism.
That's how socialists work.
Sharing is
Everybody-
caring.
All I-
Sharing is caring, right?
all I knew was socialism was good. If you don't ask me why.
Everybody are socialist if they don't know anything. But
Yes.
when they start reading, then
Well,
they
the joke is that if a young man of 20 is not a socialist, he has no heart.
right.
If he's still a socialist at 50, he has no brain.
Yes.
So my support for socialism was very, very unsophisticated. Just, it was good because you shared and everyone was nice. Whereas under capitalism, you had competition and people were competing and there was greed and people
And maybe
were
not too fair.
not so fair.
Yeah.
There was exploitation, and that was it. But I didn't know much about it. Now I have more knowledge. I mean, as Murray Rothbard was my mentor, Ludwig von Mises was Murray Rothbard's mentor. So I've read a lot of Mises. He wrote a book on socialism, and now I think my criticism of socialism is a lot more sophisticated than it was when I first began my intellectual odyssey.
Well, time is on your side, I think. I mean, as many people understand here, this side of the world where capitalism is more like well, it's a normal thing.
Okay, I have one question. Like, how you, let's say, you talking people from Soviet Union, like few years ago was totalitarianism and dictation, and how you explain in easy way these people what is libertarianism means.
Well, what I would say now to try to convert people out of socialism and into capitalism would be that there are flaws in socialism. One of the big flaws in socialism that I get from Mises is not assuming that there was just socialism in the Soviet Union and capitalism in Europe and the US, but suppose the whole world was socialist.
Yeah, that was their goal.
Then we wouldn't have any prices that indicated scarcities. The prices would have to be concocted by the central planners, but they wouldn't know. For example, let's suppose that platinum would make better railroad rails than steel.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stipulate that that's true. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure it is true. In the West, platinum, the price of platinum is very, very high. The price of steel is very, very low. So we have to reserve platinum for important uses. We can't waste platinum on railroad tracks, even though they do a better job. But that stems from the fact that the prices of platinum here are very high and the price of steel are relatively low. But if we had pure socialism, how would they know that?
They don't know price.
They can't. They would make artificial prices. They would. But how could they get it right? It would be very, very difficult for them to get it right. Another problem is the interest rate. Look, we want to build a road from here to here. We want to build a road from Philadelphia to New York. And there's a mountain in between, let's say. And there are two ways to build a road. One is you go around the mountain, which is relatively cheap. But forever, everyone will now have a long, long trip. The other way is you go right through the mountain, you build a tunnel, which costs a lot because it's a solid rock mountain. You build a tunnel right through, which is very expensive, but it saves time for the next 300 years. So which is better? Well, it depends upon the interest rate, because the interest rate engages in present discounted value of future income streams, which means how do you compare money that we now have to spend on building the tunnel with 300 years worth of everyone saving 5 hours? And the money receivable in 100 years from now is not the same as money receivable right now. Even forgetting about inflation and forgetting about whether you'll get the money back. Which would you rather now have, a dollar now or a dollar in a year from now for sure? I'll give you the dollar for sure. You'd rather have it now because you could put it in the bank at interest and get some money. So if we had a bidding war for the dollar that I promised to give you in a year from now, the correct price would depend upon the interest rate. If the interest rate is 5%, then the proper bid would be around 95 cents. Because you take 95 cents and you put it in the bank at 5%, you'll get about $1. So $1 receivable in a year from now is not the same as $1 receivable now. Well, here we have the problem of time dimension. You build the tunnel, it costs a lot of money now, but it'll save a lot of money in the future, but we have to heavily discount the money receivable in 100 years. We have to slightly discount the money receivable or savable in 1 year. So this is a big problem, and the Soviets or the socialists have no way of solving this because they don't know what the proper interest rate is. So they can't compare money now versus money later. So these are the problems that are just intractable. And what Mises says is that under socialism, you would have no rational economy. So they would be much poorer. And then we have all sorts of empirical examples like East Germany and West Germany. The same culture, the same history, the same language, the same everything.
North Korea, South Korea.
North Korea and South Korea, the same thing.
Yes.
And in East Germany and in North Korea, they went socialist. And in South Korea and in West Germany, they went not pure capitalist, the Rothbardian view, but closer. And where was the immigration from? You know, they say the best way to tell, well, is it a good system or not, is where do the people go?
Right.
They were trying to jump them.
They weren't trying to get into East Germany. They weren't trying to get into North Korea
Certainly.
because there's starvation there in North
So,
Korea
what?
because of
like
socialism.
a small conclusion. What you're saying, in a socialist system, mostly is losing money, like losing decisions. Mostly, you can sometimes maybe.
No, they do a good job because they have prices from the West. The whole system is economically irrational. And the reason you might say, well, how come then the Soviet Union lasted for many, many years? Well, they had prices from the West and interest rates from the West, and they could adjust a little. They knew that platinum was more expensive than
Yes.
steel because in the U.S. it was so. They could look at the prices in the newspaper in the West and have a semi-rational economy. But assuming total socialism and no history where they could get prices from the history before the socialism
The whole
started,
world.
the whole world is socialist.
Then what to do?
And
They don't have intelligence services under to steal the information.
Mars.
That's it.
Go to Mars.
they would have to guess. And, as Mises says, it would be irrational economically speaking. So that is the main objection to socialism. And whenever there's price control, there's always either a shortage or a surplus. Unfortunately, here we are in Canada and in the U.S., they have rent control.
Yeah.
And they have minimum wage law. Mises was very clear on this. He said it's hard to have a mixed economy because whenever you interfere, it creates a problem, and then you have to interfere again to fix it, and that creates a problem. Then you have to interfere to fix that, and that creates a problem. And if you keep going in that direction, you're into socialism. So, for example, what they do is they have rent control, and now there's a housing shortage. So they subsidize housing. So we have more housing, but the subsidization of housing is a problem. It creates bad incentives. People no longer have an incentive to save for their house. They can get a house for free. And then they have to fix that. And it's the same with minimum wage law. Minimum wage law is an attempt to raise prices above where the market would be. And what that does is it creates unemployment. Now there's a surplus of labor. And when you have unemployment, then the government says, oh, we have unemployment, we have to fix that. And then they have maybe a welfare for the poor. But you give welfare for the poor, and that creates other problems, and they have to keep fixing those problems.
It's
So
going deep and deep.
deeper and deeper into more towards socialism.
So every involvement from government creates more undefendables. That's why in your book you called this book is defense of marketplace.
Absolutely.
That's the quote.
So
And
I say, thank God for the government, otherwise I'd have nothing to write about.
Yeah.
No, I'm not fully serious there.
First word we heard when we were like 15, when Soviet collapsed, and all this new information were coming from open borders and free market, free market. Like these two words, like free market is good, like that's the best. And in our minds, like expectation was that it's free market here. And then this book tells us that 45 years ago, it wasn't that free because it needed defense from you. Defense of marketplace, you called it. So
Yeah, unhappily, the U.S. is not as free as we would like. One of my books that I wrote when I was at the Fraser Institute was comparing the economic freedom of all the countries in the world. And at the time that that book came out, I think it was 1976. I'm not sure. I think it was then. The U.S. was the fourth most freest country in the world. And I think Hong Kong and Singapore and maybe Switzerland were number 3, 1, 2, and 3. Then the U.S. and Canada and a few other countries. And we had maybe 150 countries that we were comparing. Nowadays, unfortunately, the U.S. is not even in the top 10 in terms of economic freedom. The U.S. has become less and less free as time went on.
because
Because of, like Mrs. says, you going like this.
Well, that's one reason. This is an interesting historical question as to why. And one possibility is that, but that applies to every country. So why was the U.S. uniquely becoming more socialist? And here's my guess. China had a cultural revolution. And they killed millions of people. We in the U.S. are now having a cultural revolution with wokeism, where you can't say colored people. You have to say people of color. If you say colored people, you're a racist. And then we have trigger warnings, and we have cultural appropriation. If a black person listens to Mozart, he's a cultural appropriator. If a Oriental wears a Mexican hat, this is just crazy. We are now having a cultural revolution. Happily, nobody is being
you had
killed.
to ask.
Sorry.
You had to ask. How do you like she or her or them?
Yes. You can't say
Genders.
You have to say he or she. You can't say he, even though in the English language he
That's the guy.
covers both. And I forget his name. He lost it. He quit his job at the University of Toronto, which is one of the better universities in Canada, because he said that he couldn't honestly take a white male student because the universities are against white males. And he had to quit. Jordan Peterson was his name, very famous guy. This wokeism is just stifling academia. There was this case, the American and the Canadian Anthropological Societies had a panel ready to discuss, and they were going to discuss anthropology from a male-female point of view, and it was banned because you can't distinguish between male and female anymore. There aren't two genders. There's, I don't know, 57 genders. I don't know how many genders there are. It's hard to keep track. So this is just a horrible situation with the U.S., and you're quite right. The U.S. is not as free as some of us would like it to be, and it's not even as free as it once was relative to other countries.
It was free relative to Soviet Union. It is.
Yeah,
But
free.
it's
Well,
not.
in some ways, the Soviet Union is almost as free, or maybe freer, than the United States.
Also,
Not definitely.
also,
Well, Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
No, I mean, I'm interesting. Maybe,
Well,
I mean, you saw something that I didn't see.
Well, the way we calculated freedom of the countries was in four different ways. One was how much taxes is there. Another was tariffs, free trade. Another is monetary policy, and another is welfare. So if you compare the Soviet Union and the US, they're a lot closer than they once were. At one time in 1976, the US was the fourth freest country, and I don't even think the Soviet Union was in our list. It was way, way down. Now the difference between the two is much less.
There is no,
Now, yes.
but there is no Soviet.
The post-Soviet
Well, in
countries.
Russia
yeah,
or
yeah.
Georgia, Lithuania, all those countries, the average economic freedom is much closer to the US than it once
Oh,
was.
now I understand
Okay.
what you mean.
Yeah.
Now I understand.
Yeah.
Because even though many things are still there and rusty, we're learning it. We're changing it. That's why we're sitting here.
Yeah,
That's why we having this war.
yeah, Russia and all the other countries in Eastern Europe are becoming freer and freer, and the US is becoming less free. Now, I don't say that they're equal, but they're closer.
Yes.
Now I got you.
About this discriminations topic, wanted to ask you like about the quotes. They have quotes everywhere. Like
You mean quotas?
Quotas, yes. Quotas like the university you need to get Asian this much, black people this much, this much, and even now in Georgia they got a new law. If you are a political party in your list of like candidates in the parliament, every fourth candidate should be woman. Even though like maybe you don't
Maybe you have 10 women.
yeah, but fourth then so
If we
What-
qualify
what-
for 8
like
spots,
how fair it can be, like it's like what is the logic of these people, or what do you think, and who are these people, like everybody like putting on this position?
Well, the argument is that women make, 75 cents for every dollar that a man makes. Or a black makes 70 cents for every dollar that a white makes. There's a pay gap. And the reason for the pay gap is discrimination. That we just don't like women. We don't like blacks. We don't like gays, homosexuals. And the discrimination, in technical terms, the demand curve for this type of labor shifts to the left. And therefore, it hits the supply curve at a lower wage, and that's why the wages are lower, because of racial or sexual discrimination. Now, there are three people who have done more on this issue to show why it's wrong than any other three people. One is Gary Becker, my former dissertation advisor. Another is two black economists, Walter Williams, who recently passed away, and Thomas Sowell, Sowell. And they've shown very, very clearly that this is erroneous theory.
Fiction.
Erroneous picture. Now, assume that men and women have equal productivity.
Let's say.
Let's assume.
Okay.
And what do I mean by productivity? What I mean by productivity is if you hire a woman, your receipts go up by $20 an hour. Every hour the woman is on the shop floor, your receipts are $20 more than without her. And a man has the same productivity, $20. Every second you're on the shop floor, I'm your employer, I'm richer by $20. But I only have to pay the woman $15.
you make more profit.
So I make more profit off of her. On you, I make no profit, and in equilibrium, there is no such thing as profit because the market grinds down profits. But with the woman, I'm making $5 an hour more. So you're going to offer the woman that I'm hiring for 15, you're going to offer her 16. You're going to offer her 17. You're going to offer her 18.
Eventually, it's gonna-
Eventually, it'll be the same.
Yes.
But it's not the same. So why is it different? Because their productivity is not the same. Men have higher productivity than women, on average. Now, 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, it was easy to see why. Men are stronger than women. Even the wokists will agree with that. Although they don't like it. The women's soccer team makes less money than the men's soccer team in the US, and the women are very unhappy about that. There is NBA, National Basketball Association, for men. And then there's a WNBA, Women's National Basketball Association. The Men's Basketball Association, a game will have 12,000 people. The women, they might have 120 people. So obviously, the productivity of the men is higher in terms of receipts. So, 100 years ago, as I was saying, it was easy to see why when men were more productive, because the way we cut down a tree was with a saw. And men are stronger than women, so we can cut this
You need the muscles.
muscle to the way we dig a tunnel is with a pick and shovel. Now the way we cut down a tree is you press a button and the electronic buzz. So a woman can do that just as well as a man. And now how do we dig a hole in the ground for a foundation for a building? Not with picks and shovels, with a steam shovel. And women can do that just as well as men. So that was easy. That men were more productive then. Why are they more productive now? The main reason men are more productive now is because of a thing called the marital asymmetry hypothesis. What's the marital asymmetry hypothesis? The marital asymmetry hypothesis is for married men and married women, the woman does most of the baby, all the breastfeeding, obviously. But the cooking and the cleaning and the shopping and the ironing, and the woman does 95% of that. The men do much less. Well, the example I usually use to illustrate this is Yo-Yo Ma, who is the best cellist in the world, and Usain Bolt, who is the fastest man on 100 yards. How good a cello player is Usain Bolt?
You cannot compare.
Not very good, because he spends all of his time doing stuff for the track, lifting weights and jumping and running 100 yards and running a mile. He doesn't play the cello. If he plays the cello, he plays, a half hour a week. What's Yo-Yo Ma's time in 100? Not that good, because he plays the cello all the time. So whenever you specialize in anything, you do it at the cost of not being good at other things.
Mm-hmm.
So if women are specializing in cooking and cleaning and childcare, they have to be less good as chemists, less good as computer people, less good as cellists, less good at, it's just common sense. So here's the proof of this. If you take ever married people, widowed, divorced, separated, married, the gap is gigantic. If you take never married men and women, not widowed, not divorced, not separated, not married, there's no gap. No gap. Which shows that marriage diverts productivity between men and women.
Because it holds a lot of responsibility in it.
They take their kids. I mean, when my son was born, my wife has sharp elbows. She wouldn't let me near him because if I diapered him, I might hurt him. Women are much more
Process, right? Yeah.
they're much more involved with kids than men, on average. Look, it's always on average. I say men are stronger than women. There are some women shot putters who are women karate experts who could beat up all four of us. But not on average. On average, men are stronger than women. On average, women are more involved with children than men. This is just common sense. Everyone knows this, but yet you're not allowed to say this because this is sexist.
Well, I would say it's a natural.
Yeah.
So being a natural is being a sexist?
Yeah, that's right. Just common sense is no good anymore under the cultural revolution we're now having. So the argument is that if you, so the reason they want to have these quotas is because they think women are being dealt with unfairly. Let me draw this for you. I don't know if you could see it, but I'll draw this. So here is good, here is bad, and here is frequency. I don't know if you can see that
that's
at
your
all.
camera, yes.
Okay. And here we have two normal curves. Here is the female, and here is the male. And what we're talking about is terms of ability. And men are God or nature's crapshoot. There are some very, very good men over here. These men are very, very good. These are the ones that win the Nobel Prize in, physics, or
Okay, very successful.
very, very good men. So if you look at Nobel Prizes and Fields medals in math and chess, it's virtually all men. The men outnumber the women in terms of good things like that. Now, if you look over here on the bad, you go to jail, and who do you see in jail?
Men.
Men. You go to a mental institution. Who do you see in the mental institution? Men. You go to homeless. There are homeless, I don't know if it's in your countries, but in the US and Canada, there are homeless, virtually all men. So over here, the men outnumber the women in terms of both good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about this stuff over here. You would
We see there
frequency.
frequency, okay.
Frequency. Namely the number
Yes.
of people. So, as I say, men are God or nature's crapshoot. Some are very, very good, some are very, very bad. Women are God or nature's insurance policy. They're all pretty good. None of them are spectacularly good, or very, very few are spectacularly good, but very, very few are spectacularly bad.
So that's why it was given female to the world after male. It was insured.
This is the male.
God insured situation by giving the female after the male was okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Now, this stuff is, if you tell this on a university campus, they'll say, well, you should have given a trigger warning, or this is sexist, or I feel unsafe.
But it's a fact.
Of course it's a fact, but
So-
you're not allowed to say it.
Uh,
Because,
so we all agree, so we lie for each other.
well, we just don't talk about this stuff.
Oh, so
Or if we talk about it,
How about
we lie.
the way George asked, he mentioned racist, racism.
It's the same thing with the race. The IQ of Orientals is the highest.
yes.
The IQ of whites is in the middle, and the IQ of blacks is lower.
But don't you think statistics of it is a problem? Like Morgan Freeman once said in an interview, he said, let's stop talking about it. Like he said, like it is solution. He said, I don't need Black History Month. Do you have White History Months? He said, he asked. No. So let's stop talking. Let's stop counting. He said.
Underline.
I don't want to know black neighborhoods. I want to know Oriental neighborhoods. Once you don't know that, he said that's the solution. For example, you agreed to sit with us today. You didn't ask how many of you are bald, right? Because there is no statistics of
discrimination.
bald. If there was statistic of bald podcasters being bad, low IQ, you would know it and you would say, hey guys, are you bald? Okay, I don't want to do it.
Let's us three discriminate against them.
So if that was the case, if the statistics existed, then you would know it and you would be you and Duch.
Yes, but you
That's-
say you start.
Does it make sense
No.
to you?
You start saying this when you tell me, like you need to give like same salary to women, you start already discrimination, not
Same.
me.
Yes. Let's
When
not
you
talk
say-
about it. Do you agree with Morgan Freeman?
No, I mean, the whole academic institution is to talk about everything. How are we going to learn if we can't talk about things?
I want to make sure that the academic, yes, yeah, we have to talk. But what he mentions that if we keep underlining this and he's triggering, well, that's what he thought is a problem when you're triggering, when you're labeling.
But they keep talking about it. They keep saying we have to close the gap, the educational
Because
gap.
they count.
They,
What if nobody counted?
Well, there's this woman, let me see if University of Pennsylvania, I forget her name, it was at the tip of my tongue. I met her personally. And what she said was in her law school, blacks are never in the top half of the distribution. They're always in the bottom half. And they wanted to fire her for saying that, and it's true. If you go to a hospital and you see a black doctor and a white doctor, who are you going to pick?
Look at credentials.
Given that the black doctor was there because of affirmative action, and that if you accept a black doctor into medical school and you fail him, you're a racist. They're even doing it with airline pilots. I mean, what we want is merit for doctors, for airline pilots, for everything. We want to pick the best people for everything. And if we pick people because of the color of their skin or because of the shape of their internal plumbing, like 1/4 of all the politicians have to be female, well, then we'll have less quality than otherwise. We want doctors who are good at medicine. And if we pick people who couldn't get into medical school because their tests, their preliminary tests for medical school were too low, well, then we're not going to have as good doctors as we want. Don't we want to cure cancer? I mean, do we want to cure cancer or not? And how are we going to cure cancer? With the best chemists and the best biologists? Or with 1/4 this and 1/3 that? And we want good airline pilots, don't we? We don't want to have air crashing. Well, then you pick people based on their ability to fly a plane. And you don't care if they're pink or blue or green or whatever color they are, or whatever the shape of their nose, or whether they're bald or not. You want people who can fly a plane. You want people, if you're going to have a heart transplant, you want a doctor who's good at transplanting hearts. You don't want one who had a certain color or any irrelevancies, that they should be 6 feet tall. Who cares how tall they are? Now, I happen to be very short. I'm 5'6", and we should have affirmative action for 5'6" people, and we should have more 5'6" people and below in medicine and in airline pilots. That's crazy.
What do they fear? Why are they doing this? They fear of something. They fear of something that we're going to create some kind of different society.
I think it's unfair that women have a lower wage on average. The NBA is about 85% black. Where are the short, fat Jews who can't run and can't jump?
Like you.
Like me. I want to be in the NBA.
Yes.
And they pick people who have springs in their legs and can jump 40 feet. That's not fair. What he says is this expectation that we should all be equal in everything. That's their claim. That in the absence of discrimination, all people would be equal in everything. Blacks are 13% of the population. They'd be 13% of the football league and 13% of the basketball league. And they're not. Because they happen to be very superb athletes. And Jews are 2% of the population, or 3%. And they're, 20% of the Nobel Prize winners in academia.
But nobody in NBA.
But, well, there might be one.
Maybe one.
I don't know. Maybe there's one. They talk about the education gap you have to close. What about the basketball gap? When are we going to close the basketball gap between white and black, or the Oriental and black and white? So that would, look, if you're 6'8", or 6'10", you cannot buy off-the-rack clothing
Wow.
because they don't make clothing for if you're 6'10".
Yeah, you need a special.
You have to go to a special place to get clothing. It's not fair. We discriminate against people who are 6'10", 7 feet, 7'2". You just don't go and buy shoes. My shoes are size 10 or 11. The guy who's 7 foot is 18 or something. You just don't go to a shoe store and buy a shoe. So this is unfair? Well, that's reality. You're imposing more costs. Here's another story I got from Walter Williams. I'm going to give you $500. You're going to go to a college campus, and you're going to find someone a student who can dunk a basketball and can solve a quadratic equation. You can't talk to them. You just have to pick them. And if you pick someone correctly, you get $500. Who are you going to pick to dunk a basketball?
The taller one.
Not only a tall
Well,
one,
which
but
jump?
a black one.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Because they have
you already
because they have
most likely.
because they have springs in their legs.
Right.
And who are you going to pick to solve a quadratic equation? Somebody with thick glasses and eyes like this, namely an Oriental kid with thick glasses. He's more likely to solve a quadratic equation. This is Walter Williams talking, and I think it's true. No, suppose you pick the little guy with glasses and Oriental to dunk a basketball. What are you, crazy?
But when you said about quotas, like if Walter Williams and you have set up university, you decide who you accept, who are to tell you.
The government take you
I
license.
agree with you. I just wrote an article saying that I'm setting up Walter Block University. And in Walter Block University, everybody has to say how great Walter Block is.
Okay.
And if you don't say how great Walter Block is, you get kicked out. Do I have a right to do that?
Why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. So then why am I against Harvard doing that? Because the people who are doing that aren't the rightful owners of Harvard, whereas I am the rightful owner of Walter Block University. So there's nothing wrong per se. It's sort of like socialism. There is good socialism if it's voluntary. So there's good wokeism if it's voluntary.
Yeah.
Look, you come to my house, you have to wear a propeller beanie and you have to crawl and push a peanut with your nose. You don't like that? Don't come to my house. People can make any rules that they want. But this is blatant theft because the people in charge of Harvard are not the rightful owners of Harvard, are not the ones who are imposing wokeism.
Who's the rightful owner of Harvard? How does it run? I mean, briefly, if you can say how elite schools are run here, in Western civilization.
That's a good question. I'm really not sure who the rightful owners of Harvard are, but they're not the people who are doing this.
Like board and wherever, they're not the
The
people.
board
but-
of trustees or whatever. Yeah.
So that pain is what made you to go into specifics. Why we are here is mainly book.
Okay.
That's the pain why you wrote academic about denial of academic freedom. You said the word theft. That's what you mentioned here.
Yeah.
Stolen property, controlled by the government, they are stolen property, you said. You also said freedom to teach this,
Microphone.
freedom to teach the subject matter in whatever form the academic wishes to teach it. So I understand your pain. My question is, wanna start from here. In commentary on first page,
Yeah. Hayek.
Hayek wrote, "You are doing a real service, although you will not make yourself more popular with the majority." So Hayek kinda did prediction. He told you prediction. I wanna know your real life experience. Did you get bullied a lot of times? Did you have
Oh yeah.
have you been Like, give us some interesting stories if you.
Yes, I have several interesting stories. One, the New York Times interviewed me about libertarianism. And I was happy to interview with the New York Times because the New York Times is
Big name.
got a big megaphone, big
Yes.
name. And I was explaining libertarianism. And I explained the non-aggression principle, that the one rule is keep your mitts to yourself, don't grab other people or their property without their permission. Boxing is okay, because if we agree to box and I hit you, you can't complain. Below the belt, you can complain, but above the belt, you've agreed, and vice versa. So that's okay. And they just weren't getting it. Either because they were too stupid, which I doubted, or because they wanted a gotcha moment. They wanted me to say something that they could get me for. Later, I learned that the reason for this interview was Ron Paul's son, was in 2016 was a viable candidate for presidency, and they wanted to ruin Rand Paul. And this interview took place in late 2014 or 2015, and they were trying to get him. And the thesis of theirs was Rand Paul is crazy because he hangs around with crazy people, and I'm one of the crazy people with whom he hangs around with. Not that I hang around a lot with him, but a little bit. He's a fellow libertarian, so I hang around with him. And they just weren't getting it. So I gave them the nuclear version of libertarianism, voluntary slavery.
Okay.
Now we know that slavery is an abomination. Slavery is evil
No.
because it's coercive. It violates the non-aggression principle. So what's voluntary slavery? Voluntary slavery is my son, God forbid, has a horrible disease and it'll cost $50 million to cure him, and I don't have $50 million. You are a very rich man, and you're willing to give me, not me, but give to my son's doctors $50 million, and they'll cure him. And I value his life more than my freedom. And you value my servitude more than $50 million.
Mm-hmm.
So we make a deal. I'll come to your plantation, I'll pick cotton, I'll give you economics lessons. You can kill me, you can whip me. I'm a real slave. This is not indentured servitude. Indentured servitude is 7 years and you have to treat me nicely. You own me. You can kill me. You can whip me.
Eat me.
But I value my son's life more than my freedom. Is this a valid contract? Now, among
To
libertarians,
have this right to do that.
yeah, do I have a right to contract with you?
Right.
You give me $50 million.
Government says no.
Sorry,
Government says no.
government says no, but I don't care about government. But
Okay.
within the libertarian movement, there's a big debate over this. Most people, Marie Rothbard disagrees, says it's an invalid contract. Robert Nozick, a famous libertarian philosopher, agrees with me that this is a valid contract. So I told the New York Times that this is the nuclear version of libertarianism, the most powerful demonstration of the importance of contract and private property. So guess what they did? They wrote it up as if I favored actual slavery. And I was very clear to say that, I don't favor actual slavery. Actual slavery is an abomination. It's maybe the worst thing after murder to have slavery. And they wrote it, they were a little sneaky. In one paragraph, they made it clear that I favor slavery. In another paragraph, 15 paragraphs later, they sort of took it back a little bit. But not everyone read everything carefully. The president of my university, I tell you, if I were the president of a university and you were quoted saying that slavery was good, I would call you into my office. I'd say, please tell me you were misquoted. My president didn't do that. He just wrote an article saying, well, Bloch favors slavery. I don't. And the Jesuit tradition is against slavery. By the way, the Jesuits did have slaves during this.
Who?
The Jesuits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Loyola University is a Jesuit university, the Catholic order. So the president wrote a piece saying,
So they fired you?
no, they didn't. I have tenure. It's not easy to fire me, but they tried. And then 17 fellow professors of mine, none of them called me and asked them, was I misquoted? The president didn't call me and ask, were you misquoting? If he did, I would say, of course I was misquoting. He just wrote saying Block is a disgrace.
So you saying they did not ask you to explain, right?
No.
So you never get chance to explain.
Well, I got a chance. I wrote later on. What I did is I wrote to the New York Times saying, hey, I was misquoted. Will you please write a correction? No. Then I wrote another letter. How about a letter to the editor? Will you publish a letter to the editor? No. So I sued them. I sued the New York Times for libel.
Okay, we gotta defend them because we have a chapter there, libelers. Yep.
Yes.
Why we gotta defend them?
Yes, I wrote another article why I'm entitled to do this.
Nice.
But I'm not sure that was right, but I had to sue them.
I like
So
that.
17 professors also wrote a thing. And then 500 students got a petition saying Block should be fired. Guess why? He favors slavery. And then, but then I got another letter started by one of my students. 5,000 students said, this is nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
How do I justify suing the New York Times for libel when I have a chapter in there saying that libel should be legal? So first, let me go over the chapter and say why I think libel should be legal.
Okay.
Why is libel and slander? I think slander is speech, libel is writing, but that doesn't matter. Why do they have laws against it? Because you ruin people's reputation.
Right.
I now call you a Nazi, and I publish you're a Nazi. And nobody will speak to you, your wife divorces you, or you lose your job. I ruin your reputation. It's as if I took your shoes or your car. I stole your car. And it's even worse because your reputation is worth more than your car. You lost your wife, you lost your job, you lost all your friends, the car schmar, who cares about a car? Reputation is important.
Trust is gone.
I'm sorry?
Trust is gone.
Trust is gone. Everyone thinks you're a Nazi because I'm the New York Times and everyone believes what I say. So why does the Libertarian reject this? Because paradoxically, even though you benefit from your reputation, you work hard for your reputation. A lot of times a business is sold and they have trucks and the trucks are worth $1 million and they sell for $2 million. Why? Because of the goodwill of the company. Everyone thinks it's a good company. So people work for their reputation, people benefit from their reputation. However, they don't own their reputation. Why don't they own their reputation? Because their reputation, paradoxically, consists not of their thoughts, but of our thoughts.
It's somebody's view
About yourself.
about yourself.
Other people's view of him is what his reputation consists of. Your reputation, you don't own. We own it because it consists of our thoughts about you. And you don't own our thoughts. Therefore, I haven't stolen anything by calling you a Nazi.
So did New York Times?
Well, wait. I'm trying to make the case.
Jump
Stronger case.
Okay. So now we're clear that the libertarian view is that you can't sue people for libel. Or
Because you don't own
because you don't own your
it.
reputation.
Okay.
So how can I sue him? I worked hard on this because I had to sue him. And what I said is that this only applies to innocent people, but that the New York Times is part of the government. And I went on and on about how Sulzberger contributes to the government. The New York Times is just an instrument of the government, and therefore they don't approach this with clean hands. They are.
But itself, the concept of the New York Times is like it's a machine of the thoughts. Goes on the paper.
I'm sorry, machine
Thoughts.
yeah.
Thoughts. And that's what they do. They spread the thoughts within the people. This is how they are messing with your reputation. You don't own it. We own it. But the way I do it, I practically own it. Because I spread it within the people's mind. So I own it because I'm a New York Times, because I spend a lot of money for it. So every morning it's gonna get printed and spread out, printed and spread out. And well, that's why it's different rather what's in your chapter. What's in your chapter is average personally. all people around, between us, you and me, not like machine to the one person.
Well, this was a tough call, and I admit that there might be problems with my view, but I think I'm right. I think that if the New York Times is really a mouthpiece for the government, and the government is illegitimate, well then they can't argue that what I did to them was wrong. Look, suppose I was going to say, suppose I stole a library book from the government library, but I shouldn't say stole a book from the library, because I should say I liberated it. Because they are not the rightful owners of that book. Because how did they get that book? They stole it through taxes, and all taxes are theft, from the anarchist point of view.
That was my next question, so it's smoothly moved to the next topic.
Well,
Yes.
I want to hear
now
this.
look, if you go to a private library and take a book, you're a thief.
But
But if you go to a government library, you're not a thief. You're liberating.
okay,
My favorite character in Atlas Shrugged was a guy named Ragnar Danishkold. What did Ragnar Danishkold do? He was a pirate and he attacked government ships, not private
only
ships.
now.
Only government ships. He was the hero. I was acting like Ragnar Danishkold, my hero in Atlas Shrugged. So I think that my case for saying that libel laws are illegitimate is proper, and I think that my attack on the New York Times for libeling me was also justified, because they are part and parcel of the government apparatus. Or at least that's my claim, and I think it's a good claim.
Okay,
I
and the question, you knew SBA loans, right?
I'm sorry?
The SBA loans, Small Business,
Small Business Administration.
Oh, SBA.
Loans,
We got something.
from like when was the COVID, they gave like in US a lot of small businesses. So should we pay back them?
Absolutely not. They are thieves. They are they're a band of criminals.
But you signed contract.
A contract with a crook is illegitimate. Now, look, from a pragmatic point of view, you should pay, because if you don't pay, they have more guns than you do.
So from your answer, I make about 100,000. I'm prepared to pay.
Good. Look, should you not pay your taxes? Of course not.
No, you pay because if you don't
No,
pay,
no.
they add it. Okay.
They'll get you.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
That's why you pay.
Look, I now have a gun and I say, give me your wallet. And
Oh, you give,
are you
right?
allowed to lie and say you don't have your wallet? Of course. Because I'm a criminal. You don't have to be honest with me.
But if you saw he has a wallet, you stole it,
Well, if I saw the wallet, I'll shoot him. But
or he gives you.
the question is he entitled to lie to me? And of course he's entitled to lie to me to protect his wallet.
But I'm not even lying. I won't have a wallet.
Any other?
So,
Money is
so
gone.
subsidize from government. It's okay because libertarian says so taxes are bad. That's theft. So subsidize your business from government. So morally, it's correct to take money from them.
Only if you're a libertarian. I used to teach in the University of Central Arkansas, which is a government school, and I took a salary from them. Was this legitimate? Yes, I'm liberating money from them. They are a thief. It's okay to take a scholarship from the government, because you're just taking money back that was stolen money.
In Georgia, they give political parties. They give
Funding.
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 Ron Paul had this problem. Ron Paul was offered subsidies when he ran for president. And I think I wrote an article on this saying that it would be unwise for him to take the money, unwise, because then people would say he's a hypocrite. because he's against this and yet he's taking the money. But it would be justified. Unwise, because everyone will say he's a hypocrite. But it would be justified because it's stolen money and where is the money better off? In the hands of the thief or in the hands of maybe not even the victim, but in the hands of an innocent person?
Okay, if it's stolen money and you get chance to take it, then good thing will be to give back to that people who are stole from, right?
No, I disagree. Here's the example I use to answer that question. The Nazis are bad. We stipulate the Nazis are bad.
Yeah.
And I go into the Nazi garage and I take
Their car.
a truck.
Okay.
Whatever, I take a truck. By the way, it's your truck.
Okay.
That
They
truck,
took from
they
you.
took that truck from you.
Okay.
And I take the truck and I drive it away and I'm keeping it. And you come to me and say, hey, thanks for rescuing my truck. Give it back. And I say, go get your own truck.
Because you earned it?
He owned it.
No, you earned it.
I earned it.
You earned it.
I took it. I didn't
You
steal
took
it.
it. You risked it.
I am the rightful owner of that truck. If you want your truck, you go deal with the Nazis. Go take a different truck. I not stole it. I liberated it from them fair and square. That would
Yeah.
be my interpretation of libertarian law.
So
Well, that's interesting because we see some parallels. What we've done it as a party, as a society of as a libertarians, liberty lovers.
I think your political party, the
teaching.
Icons,
Chichi, would be unwise to take government money, just like I mentioned to Ron Paul, because everyone will say they're hypocrites. And you'll get more money from voluntary contributions when you say proudly, we're not taking government money because this is illegitimate.
Yeah.
But as a matter of proper law, you should take the money. So pragmatism and good behavior are different. Well, the only people justified in taking money from thieves are people who think that they're thieves. And only libertarians think that the government is a thief.
If
Everyone
you-
else thinks it's perfectly legitimate.
So
Therefore, they shouldn't take any.
because you think
Because
it's
it's
a
stolen.
good people.
No, you know what I'm thinking right now. What he said between these two choices, right? And what we decided at last, how we decided to treat the money, is that we took the money, but we didn't take money. I didn't take myself on. So, I like the example about the Jeep and the Nazis, right? It was his car, then he took it, and you're not giving him back because you said you earned it. But in the case, in our case, is that you earned it with him. You didn't get the car alone. Together we got it. And then when we figured that who's this together, who are those people that got the money, liberate money. So we have a way to figure it out. Who are those people? We have a way to figure it out, and then we spread the money within them. How is that? I like that look. I like that look.
That's very, very good from a pragmatic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Give it back to the people who were unfairly taxed for it. Magnificent. On the other hand, you didn't have to. It was.
We would like the
what do you
innovations.
Call it not sui generis. I forget what the word is. Over and above the call of duty. You didn't have to give it back to them. You could have told them, you want it, you go get it, like I told him. But I think it's a magnificent,
Way to do it?
magnificent publicity for you
Yeah.
to take the money and say it was unjust and give it back to the, if you can discern who.
They
Not
have
to everyone who fought with me to go to Nazis' garage. Look what happened.
I see, I
Not
misunderstood.
you are guilty. So you need votes, 50,000 votes to get to a certain percentage to be eligible for that XX amount. So what happened is 50,000 people went with Girch into Nazis' garage. Without them, we could not open
Give it
garage.
to them.
So
Not to all
they
of us.
opened the garage because 50,000 people helped. Took the truck, and now this truck is worth $50,000, and all these 50,000 people gets $1. And there came meritocracy into place. Someone had like contribution of 100, someone had only one, so this guy got $100 back, this guy got $1. Is it fair?
It's magnificent. It's just wonderful.
That's a good start about buying coal.
I think this is great. See, I thought you gave it to every taxpayer.
No,
But you gave it
because
to
some taxpayer did not vote us.
Right.
They vote some socialists,
Got it. Got it.
Nazis, Hitlers.
Yes. So they want
Stalin.
Nazis, and
Got it.
So why should I give them?
No, this is great. This is magnificent. I'm a fan.
what do you think with this formula? Could this work in here,
I think
in
it's
the United
wonderful.
States?
It can work anywhere. It's the same,
George had a question.
same situation.
That
Well, I think
Why?
this is gonna lead to one question that one chapter that you wrote, and that story is linking to there. It's what we call, I don't know how you're saying it, faking, like fake money, when you print your own money.
Oh,
counterfeit.
counterfeiting.
Okay. Okay, I think we could do that because we figured it out how to counterfeit. And that's the key and the beauty how we figured out this magnificent decision.
Let me just say that this is a philosophical discussion, and I'm not advocating breaking the law. So with regard to counterfeiting, counterfeiting is illegal, and I'm not advocating that anyone break the law and engage
We
in
are talking
counterfeiting.
theoretically.
Legal.
Theoretically.
And I just want to mention it. I don't know if it really counts. That today's we have so many different crypto money, right?
So, you know,
Cryptocurrencies that are not belong to any government. They're not governed by government. They're governed by human beings. I don't know. It could be one person or I don't know the board or whatever. So now nowadays we have ability to create our own money. Although back then they too, but today many people understand how to do it. And way we communicate, you could really market your money. You could sell your money, and we have clearly many projects like that are valued very in high value. You heard the Bitcoin, right? So today it's kind of similar, like some private money. I mean, no government owns it, and people only own it.
well, let me talk a little bit about the counterfeiting chapter. The book was highly criticized and also highly praised. You saw what Hayek said. He compared me to Mises. When I read that, I thought he was drunk or something. I was just a kid, you know. I was 76, 30, 35 years old, and he's comparing me to Mises. The only chapter that had, how shall I say it, sensible criticism was by Libertarians. Matt Mackay, Bob Murphy, and the third person, I forget her name,
This chapter?
About this,
criticized this chapter. I wish I could remember her name. I'll think of it later. And they wrote very, very good criticisms of this. So what is the chapter? What the chapter says is that it's illegitimate to counterfeit legitimate money, like gold. Gold is legitimate money, and you don't always have to carry around gold. You could carry around a gold certificate. Like this piece of paper will entitle you to 10 ounces of gold. And to counterfeit that would be a crime. However, to counterfeit money, like fiat currency, like US or Canadian currency, is very different. Not a crime. One of the things that the U.S. did in the Vietnam War is they counterfeited North Korean money, North Vietnamese money. Sorry, not the Korean War, the Vietnamese War. What the U.S. did is they counterfeited North Vietnamese money in an attempt to ruin their economy with hyperinflation. So it's a big attack on money to counterfeit it.
So they actually did it and just flow in the system?
Yeah, they counterfeited the money and they dropped it here and there, and the people picked it up and it looked like money, and they started spending it. And this was maybe more powerful than a napalm bomb.
Yeah, they use it as a weapon.
They used it as money. And this was an attempt to ruin their economy. I don't say that it succeeded, but it was a good attempt. So what I'm trying to say is that if you counterfeit money, if you attack illegitimate money, if you look, if I punched you, that's illegitimate because you're innocent. But this guy over here is a criminal, and he was going to punch me, and he has a knife, and I punched him. That's legitimate. So it's okay to do something bad, punch people, if they are themselves bad. Well, fiat currency is illegitimate. So counterfeiting illegitimate counterfeit money is legitimate. So that was my argument. And their argument was, well, you screw up the whole economy. And you attack innocent people who use the fiat currency because they're on fixed incomes and now the prices are higher and they're losing out. And I'm saying they're not that innocent. They're using fiat currency. I know it's a little convoluted, but look, when I attacked the New York Times, that was convoluted. This is convoluted. I'm a convoluted kind of person. So that was my argument.
That's government does when they print money.
Yes.
They do the same thing, right?
Yes. When the government prints money, they are engaged in criminal activity. And when I counterfeit their money, I'm engaged in stopping them or hurting them.
Right. Yeah, back to these taxes, I was like, what is our approach? Like, if nobody pays nothing, how government is gonna function?
Well, if nobody pays any taxes, government can't function.
Then
And then hopefully everything that the government does that's legitimate or good will be done by private enterprise. One of my books was Highways and Streets.
I knew this. I did.
Right now in the U.S.,
I listened your lecture.
right now 40,000 people die on the highways. In Canada, about 4,000. It's all due to government ownership of the roads. If we had private roads, the road owners would compete, and they would compete in terms of one of the things they compete on is to reduce debts.
But they saying if you don't give money to government, you don't gonna have roads.
No, but you could give money to the private owners of roads. The private owners of roads would charge you less than the taxes that go for that, because government is more efficient. So we could have roads without the government.
We pay taxes and still pay tolls for
You
roads.
pay taxes and tolls. The other way would be you would just pay
But
tolls.
New Jersey Turnpike is a private,
No,
no?
nothing is private in the U.S. In Brazil, there's something quasi-private, but it's not really private.
So roads are not private.
Roads are not private, and if they were private, we would save road fatalities. And this shows that we don't need government to have roads. Now take police. There are more private police than government police right now. Police in the mall.
They have idea like everybody like voluntary taxes. So what do you think about like they pay? Okay, I don't tell you how much you pay like for our country, let's say.
Well, to me, voluntary taxes is a contradiction, like a square circle.
Okay,
You can't have a square circle, you can't have voluntary taxes because taxes are compulsory payments. But getting back to the point we were making before, every function of government could be privatized. I think that's the anarcho-capitalist libertarian.
So you strongly believe we don't need government at all.
Correct. I think government is per se a violator of the non-aggression principle because it compels you to pay money. And if I compel you to pay money and you don't agree, I'm a thief. The government compels you. Now, we didn't agree to it. Look, if I lent you $10 and now I demand $10 back from you, that's okay because you agreed to pay me back. But we didn't agree to pay the government any money. Where is the contract? I never signed any contract.
Did you vote?
I voted once before I became an anarcho-capitalist, and then laziness took over. But just, the argument is, well, you voted and you live here. The other argument is, well, you live here, therefore you have to agree. But that's a circular argument because it assumes the very thing in question. Namely, that they have a right to tell you to pay here because you live here. How about there were people in the United States before the U.S. started in 1776. The story I like to tell is somebody lives in Ohio, which in those days Ohio was just empty. And somebody from the government comes and says, hey, we're starting a government. You're a part of it. And the guy in Ohio says, well, I wish you the best of luck. We'll trade with each other. We'll be friends. And the government guy says, you don't understand. You're part of this whether you like it or not. And the guy says, what? That's kidnapping. So there's no evidence.
You are one of the state of United States.
I agree here. Now, you see, an argument for government is you and I might have a fight.
Okay.
And we need a government to make sure that we behave. Well, if that's true, Canada and Burundi might have a fight. And we need a world government to make sure Canada and Burundi or China and Brazil don't fight. Now, a lot of people don't like world government. But the implication of national government is world government. The problem with world government is if there's a world government, first of all, it would run by Indians and Chinese if it was democratic because they have the most people. And secondly, I'm Jewish, we're always running away. There's no place to run if there's a world government. At least, the Nazis, well, you go here, you go there. Mars is not yet open for occupation. So I think that the idea of government is per se a violation of rights. This is the anarcho-capitalist view of libertarianism. By the way I see the libertarian movement, 2% of all people calling themselves libertarian are anarcho-capitalists like me. Most of the people are limited government libertarians like Ayn Rand or Robert Nozick.
Minarchist.
Minarchists, right. Here the government has only 3 roles. Well, 1 role to protect the citizens. And in order to do that, they need armies, courts, and police.
Yes.
Armies to keep foreign bad guys off of us, police to make sure local bad guys don't get us, and courts in case there's a dispute.
This Congress,
Judgment.
Congress considers as a part of government.
Yeah.
Can we have private
Congress.
Private Congress? Can we have private?
Well, no. According to the minarchists, we have to have a government 3 branches: Congress, President, and Supreme Court.
Okay.
So that means we need to
We
pay
need
some
them,
taxes.
We need
Oh,
them.
yes. The only one that has no tax is the anarchists.
Yes.
The minarchists' taxes would be very low.
Yeah.
But we have
But
to have
it's-
taxes
yes.
for armies, courts, police, Supreme Court, Congress, and President. And that's about it. Then there's the next level down. This is the Ron Paul view, the U.S. Constitution. Whatever the U.S. Constitution says, it's fine. But the U.S. Constitution allows government roads and post offices.
Mm.
So that would be bad. And then the 4th level down would be classical liberals like Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek, where yes, armies, courts, and police, roads, and but also libraries and health and a very little bit of welfare. I once asked Milton Friedman what would be the ideal tax rate, 10% of the GDP.
Biblical number.
Yeah, tithing, whatever. Whereas the others would be even less than 10%, presumably. So those are the 4, and I would say each of them has about 30% or 35, 30,
Now,
32% of the libertarians are each of the three. And then the anarchists are whatever's left over, 1 or 2%. So I'm in the distinct minority. But I think it's correct that the government is per se an evil institution and we shouldn't have it. And everything that the government does that's right, like libraries and parks and roads and police, can be done privately.
But if we go, well, let's rewind like a few centuries down. It was what type of governments we used to have. We had a guy who runs with other guys, a king. Does that considered as a government? Because at that time, the king, nobles used to own the place, and peasants used to live within, or slaves or peasants, whatever. It was different class. So at that time, everything was also like private. Now, how does libertarians look at that kind of regime? Because it's already private.
Well, I don't think anything was private in those days. The king owned everything.
Well, not only king.
The king, well,
And
the
no-
prince, the king owned everything, and we give some to the prince, some to the duke, some
Yeah,
to
right.
the count.
Mhm.
But he owned everything, and if he didn't like the duke, he'd kill the duke and get another duke. Hans Hoppe, a friend of mine, and I think a brilliant libertarian, wrote a book. What is it? The God That Failed, Government, the God That Failed. No, Democracy, the God That Failed, sorry. And what he said is monarchism was better than democracy. Because under monarchism, the king owned everything privately. And he took care of it
He took care of it.
because he could give it to his son, the prince. Whereas under democracy, the president is only in office for 4 or 8 years, and he's got to make hay while the sun shines, and he's got to ruin the economy and grab as much as he can, like Biden is accused of. And his time horizon is very limited, it's 8 years. Whereas the king has got a long time horizon. So if he ruins the country, he'll ruin it for his son, the prince. So Hans is making the point that Hans is an anarchist. He's against monarchism and democracy. But he said if he had to choose between the two,
He would go with
monarchism
monarchy.
is better. Right.
So on his point of view, or the point of view of the anarchists, we're going back. Like after monarchy, we went back to democracy. It means that, like, there's a huge confused amount of the people that don't understand what they own, how they're gonna own, and then at the time everything was settled. This guy owns, those guys owns, and it was going down just steps.
Yeah, no, I think you're making a good Hans Hoppe point that monarchism has got certain advantages over democracy. And I'm a fan of Hans in general, and certainly of that book. So I agree with you that democracy might be the worst system, and monarchism might be a better system.
Okay. Well, in the way I linked the monarchism and the meritocracy somewhere like they're close to each other because you cannot be a monarch unless you earn it. You cannot be. You have to earn it. You have to prove it. Otherwise, they're gonna replace you.
That's interesting. I never thought of that there is a correlation between monarchism and merit.
okay, I had one more question. What is your opinion? Why libertarians are not so successful with the politics across the country? What we are doing wrong? Because what you're saying now, what you're saying in this book, another book like privatization, when you're saying everything should be private, like what moves or not moves, or something like this, right?
If it moves private,
Yeah,
if it doesn't move private.
Private. Okay, so when I'm talking to people like this, and okay, it's logic, common sense, everything, and it's hard to like give some arguments because your arguments are so strong and it's on a paper and it's clear. So, what is a really, like, what we are doing wrong?
You know, I've written 33 books and 700 scholarly journal articles and law reviews and maybe 5,000 op-eds. I'm not sure, I don't count those. And the one article that I'm the most proud of is the one answering that question. And my answer is biology. We're not doing anything wrong. The reason we only have 1 or 2% of the vote, despite having Ron Paul, brilliant man, Hayek, Ayn Rand, Mises,
Luck.
well, I put myself in that category, but people like me too,
Yes.
trying for many years. Why don't we succeed?
Right.
I think it's due to biology. There's this discipline called sociobiology. Sociobiology is a theory as to why we behave the way we behave now. And it says we behave the way we behave now because of what it took to live and give birth to children 1 million years ago when we were in the caves or the trees. And there are two ways that people can help each other survive. One is benevolence. And we are very benevolent. If we were in a big restaurant and somebody over there was choking, we wouldn't just continue. We don't know him. We would go over and maybe try the Heimlich maneuver, or if there was a doctor, we'd yell, doctor, or we'd get a taxi to bring him to the hospital. We wouldn't just sit here. Why? Because 1 million years ago, we lived in groups of 20, 30 people, all of whom were cousins, uncles, aunts. And we shared. When somebody killed a deer or a buffalo, everybody shared. If you didn't want to share, you weren't part of the group. And if you weren't part of the group, you didn't leave children. So we have in our makeup benevolence. The other way of dealing with each other is through the market. Did we have markets 1 million years ago?
No.
No.
So we are
So
pretty new.
we're not hardwired to appreciate markets.
Okay, so you saying in a Stone Age,
Not the Stone Age, way before the Stone Age.
okay, way before Stone Age,
We were
there were socialism.
voluntary.
Close to social.
Voluntary socialism.
Okay, one.
Benevolent. Let's forget about socialist. Benevolent.
Okay.
The whole issue of buying and selling,
Just start.
it was irrelevant.
Yes.
You have 20 people, they're all your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your parents, your grandchildren. You don't buy and sell.
So when humanity starts buying selling, just now, like few
Let
centuries.
me continue about this article.
Yes.
So that was the first third of the article. The second third was written by a friend of mine who said, but look, we go back to the Stone Age and we find deposits of 5,000 pots. 5,000 pots, and the group is only 30 or 50 people. They must be trading, because over here, 5 miles away, we found 5,000 spears. So they must have been trade. But this was only 10,000 years ago, not 1 million years ago. So we have a weak hardwiring to be open to trade, but it's very weak compared to the benevolence.
Very new.
Very new, relatively.
Yes.
Very, very relatively new.
Yes. 10,000.
In 100,000 years,
So you're saying
we might become libertarians.
No, in 100,000.
Or maybe in 1 million years, because it's biology. That,
Yeah.
I mean, you know the Rock of Sisyphus?
So we are not doing wrong.
We're not doing anything wrong.
we have 4 members in Georgia. Georgia is ahead of like 50,000 years ahead.
We have a 4 members in the Senate.
How many members?
Parliament.
Four.
In a parliament.
Oh,
In Congress.
magnificent.
Yes, huge.
Right.
Yes.
And yet
so-
libertarianism is the only true just system, and most people reject it. And according to this theory, we're not doing anything wrong. It's that, you know what the rock of Sisyphus is? Ancient story, you push the rock up the mountain and then the rock
Yeah,
comes
that's right.
back and you push it in.
Yeah.
That's what we're facing. The mountain is biology. We're fighting biology. And we're not going to win until a million years
So,
from now when biology
conclusion of
changes.
this, can we say libertarians are smarter than others because they are ahead, like according to your theory?
Look, you were saying that libertarians are smart and therefore non-libertarians are stupid. Well, Einstein was a socialist. Einstein is supposed to be smart. And I don't know because I'm not a physicist, so I don't know that he is, but everyone says Einstein is a good physicist, and yet he's a socialist. I think he was probably a good physicist, but not a good economist. Intellectuals are even worse than the average person. I think Buckley once said he'd rather be run by the first 2,000 people in the Boston telephone book than by the professoriate of Harvard. The professoriate of Harvard, the intellectuals are very, very bad. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but the average professor in a university is, 95% vote for Democratic and 4 vote for Republican. And there's no libertarian, virtually none. So I'm convinced that the answer to your very important question of why we're doing so poorly, if we're so right,
Yes.
is biology. And it's not because we're not doing a good job. There are many of us that devote their whole lives to doing this, and there are some very brilliant people.
That's your answer, but do you know any other these big guns, Hayek, Mises, how they answered that question? Do you know any?
No, I don't. I think not too many people wrote about that. I think if you Google why are libertarians doing so poorly, you'll get my article with 2 co-authors. I take full credit, I give credit out, but I think
But your answer is not so optimistic.
no, very non-optimistic.
Later in Argentina, okay?
There's a wonderful guy in Argentina.
Yeah.
He's magnificent. Every once in a while, it happens.
He could prove you wrong.
No, it's exception,
Look, it's the exception that proves the rule.
right?
There are
Yeah.
how many countries? 250 countries? Let's suppose Argentina becomes... Well, look, when I wrote that book on which is the freest country, the 2 freest countries were Hong Kong and Singapore. What happened to Hong Kong? China. Singapore is still good. Switzerland is very good. There's always... Switzerland is pretty free. If Argentina, this guy wins, and he is magnificent, I'll applaud. But I think my theory is still true. And first of all, he hasn't won yet. And secondly, if he wins, how long will he stay in office for? I don't know. He is charismatic.
Well, we want to do it in Georgia. And the only way is that we want to bribe citizens. We want to give away all the land Georgia has.
Great.
It's
So
not
they-
a bribe, that's
Well,
a
I said bribe as a place.
All the government land should be given
to citizens.
to people.
So they can rule as they want.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Because you gotta have to have this chance. When you don't have nothing to sell or give away to the people, it's very hard to, get their attention. So we got in Georgia certain things that they can, pay attention. Let's see.
Well, I wish you the best of luck to convert Georgia, to convert the whole world. We're all working on that. The question then comes up, if I'm so pessimistic about our success, what am I doing?
Yes.
And
That
the
was my
answer
next
is,
question.
it's the most fun. What could be more fun, more enjoyable than promoting liberty, even if we don't win? I can't imagine doing anything else. I like chess. I do competitive race walking, and I have hobbies that I enjoy, but promoting liberty, it's the most fantastical thing out there.
I'll ask you a question. I've heard a lot of converting stories, and they all were from socialist to libertarian. I've never heard the opposing story,
Other way around.
the way around. Like have libertarians converted to socialists? You know anyone like that?
No, I don't know of anyone. I know of people who've been burned out,
Burned out meaning
tired. They stop being libertarians because they don't think we're going to win.
oh, okay.
Or they've tried for 30 years and they don't see any improvement.
I mean, some people doing this because they want to win. It's like a sport.
Yeah, some people.
Or you are who you are and you just...
If you tell them in 100,000 years we'll win, of course they will.
Well, wet blanket. I'm a pessimist here. There are people that burn out. There are people that get tired of it. But I don't know of anyone who became an activist socialist after being a libertarian. So that's good. At least we don't lose anyone. Or we don't lose anyone to the opposite.
Yes.
We lose people from burning out or getting
But
tired.
not adding to them.
Not adding to our enemies,
Yes.
our intellectual enemies. I don't know of any. There might be some. I don't know.
I've heard, I mean, such case scenario that I was libertarian, then I kind of grew myself out of it because then I saw this huge, like, corporations, the capitalists that are growing, the government, like they go like together.
I don't know of anyone like that. I do know of this group called Bleeding Heart Libertarians. The Bleeding Heart Libertarians say they're libertarians, but they add things. Look, I like chess. I told you I like chess. Suppose I said in order to be a good libertarian, you have to like chess.
Mm-hmm.
You would say, well, I don't understand libertarianism. It's got nothing to do with chess. Well, these guys, they say that in order to be a good libertarian, you have to love homosexuals. Now, I don't hate homosexuals. I don't love them. I'm not one. I have a wife who I'll be introducing you to. But I don't think that homosexuality per se has got anything to do with libertarianism, nor black and white dating or marriage. I think you should marry whoever you want to marry, whether it's a woman, a black, a white, a gay. But these bleeding heart libertarians say that in order to be a true libertarian, you have to uphold these woke views. And I say, well, have they left libertarianism? I don't know. They say they're libertarian, and they are excellent libertarians when they focus on libertarianism. Roderick Long is one guy. There's Michael Humer, excellent, exquisite libertarians when they stick to libertarianism. But then they do this stuff. So is this that they've left libertarianism? I don't know. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I call them left-wing, thick libertarians. I'm a thin libertarian. I wish I were a little thinner here. But in terms of philosophy, I'm very, very thin. Libertarians are concerned with the non-aggression principle and homesteading and property rights, and that's it. All issues or other issues are irrelevant. But these left-wing libertarians, and then on top he is a right-wing libertarian, right-wing thick libertarian, because he says that Democrats and gays and other people should be excluded from society, which I find preposterous. He doesn't say excluded from a condominium association. That's fine. But he says excluded from society. So there are thick libertarians, and I'm against thick libertarians. And when you ask, has anyone left libertarianism and engaged in socialism? I don't know of anyone. There might be. I mean, there are many libertarians. I don't know of any. But there are people that have left libertarianism in the sense that they're adopting thick libertarianism, which I regard as almost an undermining of libertarianism, mixing it with irrelevancies.
That's it.
We have socialist and we have social libertarians.
Social liberals?
Yes, social liberals. We are these people.
Can you give me an example? I'm not sure I'm following you.
Social liberals, Democrats.
Oh, like the Democratic Party of the U.S.?
Yes,
What about it?
it's a social liberals.
Yeah, they're very bad.
Oh, well, I think what
But
he's asking you.
what is different with socials?
Socialists.
Oh, what's the difference between a socialist and a Democrat? The socialists are further along the spectrum. Not that I favor the left-right spectrum, because I'm a libertarian. I'm neither conservative nor left liberal socialist. On economic issues, we libertarians are more aligned with the conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
But on personal liberties, like the right to use drugs or prostitution or pornography, the conservatives are very bad. The liberals are not so bad.
So you guys come up with a center, like hey, a little bit here, a little bit there.
Oh, yeah.
We're not centrists either. We're not moderates. So we're neither right nor left. We're unique. We're sui generis. It's sort of like I see it like a triangle. Here's the Democrats, here's the Republicans, and here's us. And I put us at the top of the triangle.
So he doesn't
But-
look at it like left and right.
No, left and right is a very bad way to look at it, because Hitler was a rightist and Stalin was a leftist. And they're opposite, and yet they're very similar in views. Whereas Mother Teresa was a leftist, just like Stalin. That's crazy. And Ron Paul is a rightist, just like Hitler. Well, some people think Ron Paul is a Hitler, but that's just silly. So I think we're unique, and I just don't know of any libertarians who have left. But the further out on the spectrum, the socialists would be further out, and the Democrats would not be as rabid socialists.
But they still left.
They're still on the left side of the left-right political spectrum, yeah.
In this book, I did not, maybe I missed,
Yeah.
they don't like anything related to gun rights.
Gun rights. I
Yes.
don't remember what I put in each. There are 3 books, and there must be 100.
It's a big topic in Georgia. The Girchi is pro-gun rights.
Absolutely,
Legalize, they want to legalize,
absolutely.
especially with Russia being on border.
Look, one reason that Hitler never invaded Switzerland is they all had guns, and they were good skiers, and
It was too expensive.
too expensive. So if the armed citizenry is a peaceful citizenry.
Yeah.
John Lott, Lott, is very good on gun rights, and I certainly favor. I mean, the libertarian issue is it per se an invasion to have a gun? Of course not. If it is, then it's an invasion to have a fist or a penis. I mean, women say that men are all rapists because they have a penis.
Potential rapist.
No, rapists.
So argument on the opposing side is Georgians then will get drunk and kill each other. So
It's a stupid argument, but they use
can you tell Georgians, like they're watching you now, podcast going live, let's say,
Well,
common words, like not crazy, like
well,
academic.
I think it's crazy to say that people might get drunk and might shoot each other. It's possible. But
and the
then,
sober people say that.
but then they shouldn't have knives. They shouldn't have fists. They shouldn't have. I do karate. I have a brown belt in karate, so I shouldn't have feet. I mean, it's just lunatic to say that people might get drunk and might shoot each other, and
Too
therefore
many
nobody.
might.
Yeah, but the reductio ad absurdum is then let's get rid of fists and feet and elbows. You can hurt someone with an elbow. It's just ludicrous.
Okay, how is it here in Canada?
Oh, Canada's no guns. Very special. If you are in a target shooting class, or if you're a policeman, you can have a gun.
The civilian, like, no.
Very difficult to have a gun.
Thank you for your time. This was a journey for us.
My pleasure.
We will meet again.
Thank you, and we will give you your book.
We will have to.
I hope you're gonna learn Georgian.
We want you to do book signing
Oh, sure.
and we will sign that book too.
Okay, good.
From Girchi, say from Girchi.
Who do I make it out to?
We'll give you some names.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna write down.
Or just sign.
No, personal notes would be nice.
Alexander, official secretaries.
Were translated. How would you do it usually? Here, I don't know.
I'll show you what I usually do. How is that?
That's
Today.
libertarian alphabet. What does it say?
Signature.
For Liberty,
For liberty.
my name, and
Yes.
Vancouver, British Columbia.
Nice.